This is Mitch.
This is Keith.
And you're listening to Layman's Term Podcast.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
This is a podcast where we as lay people, not clergy, come together to discuss the previous week's message at First United Methodist Church and give you an opportunity to hear how a couple non-clergy discuss the happenings of the message and sermon. And we're talking this week about October 30th, about the Sabbath. We had a guest pastor with us,
Allison
Jean, I do believe, her last name. Allison Jean is with us, and we're happy to have her here. And not here on the podcast, of course, but here preaching the sermon.
Couldn't make that happen.
Hey, we don't have sponsors or guests. But anyway, we're talking about the Sabbath this Sunday. Great message, and we're going to open with we'll open like we normally do with reading the scripture. It's a bit longer, so hang with me. Exodus 31:12 through 17. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbath. This will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come, so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath, because it is holy to you. Anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death. Those who do any work on that day must be cut off from their people. For 6 days work is to be done, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death. The Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it for the generations to come as a lasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed." There you have it, Keith.
I hope I don't get put to death.
Yeah, no joke.
I feel like there's been a time or two that I haven't observed the Sabbath.
My goodness. All right, so
I hope that's like a translation thing.
well, I think we can get into this, but my layperson perspective also, we're dealing with a covenant,
mm-hmm.
and we also have a new covenant.
Yeah,
in Jesus, it supersedes the old covenant, but the old covenant being 10 commandments, or the list of commandments, the law of the was put in place to help give folks the Israelites a structure to life.
Yeah, and actually, Allison makes this point early on in this sermon, right, where she talks about, they were slaves, and then they were freed, and so really, it's the whole book of Exodus isn't just about Moses and wandering around in the desert for a long time, but it's really about the process of like discovering their freedom and trying to struggle to learn who God is themselves, right? Because for
a whole group of people, multiple generations, all went off to college together.
All went off to God college together.
There was structure.
Yeah,
there was structure in Egypt.
Yeah,
right? But this was God's giving them new structure to live by.
Yep. And so they kind of needed some basic rules and stuff to follow, right? You go to college and they're like, curfews at this time.
Or you'll be put to death.
Or you'll be put to death.
Just really add an extra layer on there.
I mean, I guess it was serious, so, I thought that was that was an interesting point from her because I never really considered that, right? Like when I think of Exodus, I really think it's a story about. I think it's before this, I thought it was a story really about Moses and
deliverance
and deliverance and trying to find a new home and praising God and then going against God and then praising God and going against God and praising that kind of thing. But that is a really interesting point where they're really trying to figure out who they are in relationship to God. And they're trying to, figure, God out for themselves. So
and they keep getting reminded. God tells them who he is, right. And tells them who they are, and then they forget.
And he
tells them again.
So I think that's a really cool perspective to have to have on it.
So yeah, and we're looking. So we talk about the Sabbath day, right? The Sabbath day was put in here. We read it in Scripture. It's referencing back to the creation story, and on the seventh day, God finished the work He had done, and He rested on the seventh day from all the work He had done. And it's reference to that. So then we're instructed to take a day of rest, and is the Sabbath. And I thought, it's Allison alludes to, it's kind of a churchy word.
Mm-hmm.
It has a Hebrew origin of Sabbath. And then progressed from there. So it really, even up through its progression as a word, it's maintained that same Sabbath root from the Hebrew. But it's a day of religious observance or abstinence from work kept by the Jewish people Friday evening to Saturday evening. And then us Christians generally observe it on Sunday as a day of rest. Generally. And kind of that root, though, when you get to it, the Sabbath just means to rest.
Yeah.
So.
But, she tries to make the point that it's not just about, I'm going to relax so I can get refreshed for the week, or I had a tough week, so I'm just going to sit down and watch some TV, maybe mow the lawn, like whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not about running your chores or doing the laundry like you need to do. It's about stopping and really having some time with God, right? A God-centered Sabbath, which made me kind of think of in a way, kind of like that Kairos moment, right? That you're supposed to be resting, not working, but you're also supposed to be spending time with God, right, in that moment. So, I wonder, because we've, as our pastors, I think Adam did this. I know Spencer talked about Sabbath too. And we've watered it down pretty heavily, right? Instead of like a whole day. Now we're down to like, can you take an hour? You know what I mean?
The
like,
word Sabbath, to rest. Like, oh, is this like a siesta?
A siesta.
I would love
take a nap.
Yeah. What if I bring back the siesta?
Ooh.
7 days a week, and then boom, it's 1 hour nap.
We can convert one of the classrooms in the church into like a nap place.
Yeah, siesta.
A siesta.
A siesta room.
Fiesta siesta.
No.
Not a fiesta, with my eyelids being closed.
All right.
Yeah, no, I mean, so what, I guess my question for you is what prevents us from, not just having a Sabbath time in the week, but like a whole day? Like what prevents us from it? What prevents you from it?
Well, I think too, I don't want to like continue this watering it down perspective, but also when you work with, we've had a cultural shift, right? Up until the Industrial Revolution, 90 some odd % of America was agrarian. Right, and that was that's recent history. Mm-hmm. And the farther you go back, the percentages of agrarian agricultural goes through the roof. Like with hunter gatherers and growers, right?
Yeah.
And so you're talking first century stuff here, or before, right? Before we're talking about Exodus. Life is hard work, hard physical manual labor. Their daily lives were like working out every day, all day long. Like,
dropping and doing push-ups.
Yeah, they were doing a hard workout.
Well,
hold on, I'm getting to a point, right? I don't want to say things were easier, but it could get easier to not toil if you were doing a lot of toil.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
So you think of a Sabbath as maybe being a little more sedentary, is what I'm saying. The general term. It's talking
Yeah.
about setting this time apart. The activities of setting it apart. Setting apart some time for worship. Setting apart time for prayer and reflection. Setting apart time to not be toiling.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Well, a lot of us now, our toil is sedentary.
Mm-hmm.
So we're blurring lines.
Mm-hmm.
That's what.
Okay, so I'm gonna.
So you
I'm gonna stop
deliver
for a
the
second.
counter argument.
Okay, I'm gonna, and I wish I had more details on that. I just wish I remembered more. But I was reading a study that was talking about if you go further back than agrarian, right? If you go to
Hunter
gatherers,
Okay.
a lot of the groups would spend less than 2 hours a day hunting or gathering, and the rest of the time was just they were there. Like, we watch movies where like the men all leave for like 5 weeks to go hunt down a woolly mammoth or something, right? And then drag it back, and then they like feast, and then they go back out the next day. And that's not what happened. So in a lot of cases, they were moving from place to place to place quite a bit, right? But it wasn't this constant.
Okay.
It wasn't this constant, like, like what we would do, hiking the Appalachian Trail every day, get up, pack up your tent, walk, 5 miles, whatever, check in the sights, grab some berries from a bush, pitch your tent and sleep again, right? They would move month to month, right? And then kind of like clean the area out of resources and move on to a place that had resources, right? But this study was specifically saying that a lot of them didn't do a lot of work throughout because think of agriculture, you gotta and the agriculture changed that, right? So you're in one place, you got to do a lot more work to plant the stuff to eat, right?
Yeah, but not even the planting and the harvest, like, ancient grains. I'm pretty sure hand cultivating, growing, and harvesting, quinoa. Takes a lot of hours.
Yeah, and so
Toil, a lot of toil.
I'm semi-agreeing with you.
That's all I ask for.
But I think that the way that we reminisce, not necessarily reminisce, but the way that we look at agricultural societies today is how the agricultural societies looked at hunter-gatherers. They
were more active?
That the agricultural society looked back and said, man, life was great when we were just killing a deer every now and then and moving the tent. See what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay, and so this is just my initial take.
This is layman's term.
This is layman's term right now. Okay, so I think at the time they were looking at it like, I've got all this work to do. We're just doing all this stuff, and God's like, you need to take time for yourself, right? And the relationship with me,
sure.
Right?
Fully agree with you.
Okay. Now
I fully agree.
Now I'm going to argue that today we do a heck of a lot less work, but we keep ourselves busy with miscellaneous stuff like your cell phone and, I've got to do all the laundry on Saturday. Well, you don't have to do all the, if you did a little bit of laundry every day, you'd be okay, right? But we purposely
waste time. Totally understand.
And we look at, and she kind of makes this point, right? Where we look at work like the measure of our worth is by what we produce, right? So if I work 60 hours a week, then I'm a better worker than if I worked 40 hours a week or if I worked 20 hours a week.
My value is
my
personal
higher.
Self-worth.
Yeah.
I perceive my personal self-worth to be of higher value.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to go back to the point I was attempting to make and bring it back to like exercise, right? Physical toil. Right? If I think it's a little easier because the line's been blurred to just say, all right, Keith, pretend you ran 10 miles a day. Okay?
Okay.
If I told you one of those days, don't do that.
I'd probably be happy.
Right? That's all. That's the line.
I'd probably be super happy.
Right. We're not talking. That's what I was. I'm equating. I'm equating the nomadic lifestyle to a 10K of daily toil, where
The agricultural society.
either one.
Okay. I don't think the hunter-gatherers were that way. Just my 2 cents. From what I understand from
And
this
I
study.
don't even know how.
And I'll have to find it and
Hey,
re-look it
as
up.
a layman,
As
I
a
need to
layman.
do a little more research as to what exactly the Israelites were eating, in this wandering. I do know because Scripture
Manna.
tells us that back in Egypt they had cucumbers.
They had cucumbers?
It's
Did
what
they
it
have
says.
pickles?
Well, I would assume they attempted to preserve the cucumber somehow.
I love pickles.
I love cucumbers.
Doesn't Adam hate pickles?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
all things pickled.
It seems like whatever I really like
Oh, yeah.
as a side or a condiment,
Yeah.
Adam doesn't like.
I don't think he minds us sharing that, because if you were ever to want to
Have some homemade pickles, and you're like, I should bring some in
I should.
to Adam. Don't.
No, that is not.
That's not a good thing.
You want to love your pastor, and you want to know exactly what it is they like. And when it comes to barbecue, he likes the meat and none of the side dishes.
And none of the side
None of
dishes.
them. No potato salad.
No, he doesn't like.
beans,
No, he doesn't like
no
potato
slaw.
salad. He doesn't like mustard,
No
which is
pickles.
weird. It's super weird.
Anyway,
Yeah. So, this thought process of Sabbath.
so when did you have true, real Sabbath in your life?
Oh, probably never. I mean, I can't. Trying not to mix. I try to take time every day in thought and prayer and talking to God, right? And trying not to mix that concept up with this watered down taking a Sabbath once a week, right? Because I think it's two different activities, right? And so I do take time every day to pray, to think, to talk to God. But I don't think that I've ever purposely taken a Sabbath. It might have hit me.
But then also you got to get into, and Allison refers to this too about how they even made it kind of a ritualistic rule that Jesus kind of clears up for us as well, because traditional Jewish Sabbath, you weren't allowed to cook, you weren't allowed to prepare. Everything had to be prepared the day before, because you weren't doing anything. You weren't doing anything. You were just. Oh my gosh. Layman's Term Podcast with the door open. Welcome everybody to the office. So this part of the Sabbath of preparing everything in advance, you did absolutely nothing. I think was kind of some rules based religious rituals that were placed onto the Sabbath, that I think Jesus broke some of that down, and was more like spending time communing with God and others. And so like if you have a Sunday evening, you're hosting a small group, and you've cooked and cleaned and you vacuumed hour before the small group
trash.
Gets there, but took out the trash. But your small group's getting there, and you're gonna have a meal together. You're gonna have fellowship. You're gonna study scripture, and you're gonna commune with one another. Well, I'm gonna move that up the ladder on effective Sabbath work.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Sabbath work. See how I put those two words together?
Yeah. I
Rest work.
had a friend growing up when I was in probably 5th or 6th grade, and I'm gonna say that he was Mormon. I'm pretty sure, 99% sure. But they practiced Sabbath, and like their rule was basically they couldn't sweat. So if it was like anything like playing basketball outside, couldn't do it. Like
And see, I think that's a
looked at that
I think
as like
that's
work.
a ritual that is really skewed. Like if I'm gonna last Sunday, we played softball.
Yeah, couldn't do it.
Amazing! It was phenomenal. That was just so much fun.
Yeah,
so
I like to shout out First United Methodist Church softball champs.
They were
Versus other churches in Kearney that will remain nameless, but First United Methodist Church, number 1 this year in softball.
Yeah. I mean,
No trophy, though. Yet.
There should be.
There should
a very
be. Yeah, but see,
large, obnoxious trophy.
You couldn't play softball if you were my friend. Like you couldn't. The whole thing was to rest. And so
I think that's refreshing and resting, and it comes back to my blurred line again.
Yeah.
Right? It's whenever the week is sedentary and clickety-clacking behind a computer screen and cranking out a podcast and photoshopping and vacuuming and writing.
Yeah.
Breaking out of that norm, getting together with faithful believers in your community and really making other churches in the town decide whether they want to instill a physical fitness program at their youth level to build up a future
softball
team that can compete.
A softball program.
I think is can be Sabbath.
I see.
Layman's terms.
I kind of disagree. I guess I look at them as different. I look at a small group as a small group, and I know you're kind of blurring the lines a little bit, but I just see it as I don't know. I see it as slightly different, and that's okay.
And that's
all right. And I thought, anyway. So I don't think we have the answers for Sabbath. I think the key is to just start.
Yeah,
do something, right? Like Adam would say, doing something is better than not doing anything.
Yeah, because I think because the Sabbath, what the message is really trying to teach us is we are not self-sufficient. So no matter what we think, we need God. We need God to help us in all the things, and we need God to help us rest.
Yeah. And some of us need God more than others, like me. Like I need. Well, that was good. That was fun.
This is Mitch, and
this is Keith.
And you just listened to Layman's Term Podcast.
See ya.